Anyway, good afternoon. Um, my name is Richard, and thanks to you for setting up the Igniter event. It's really great. So I set up Rodhus Studios in February of 2011. And Rodhus is situated in a sprawling old factory on Hollingdean Road in Brighton, Brighton's very own meat packing district. Indeed, part of the site used to be an abattoir a long time ago. And the factory's set out on different levels. So it's a sprawling building. So it's totally rubbish for sort of modern lean manufacturing, but perfect for what we do, which is providing workspace for makers, designer makers, artists, and that sort of thing. People working in many disciplines, or within the creative sector. And so we've got people based here, ranging from, I've got a BAFTA award-winning sound designer, photographers, ceramicists, artists, and the work here sort of constantly amazes me and surprises me, and I get to see the most amazing work before it kind of goes out into the world, and that's a real privilege for me. And so I set up Rodhus after I sold my lighting business, and so from 2005 to 2010, I was running this lighting company, and my background was in product design, which is the thing I kind of like doing, and I really hated running the business, so I sold it in 2010, had a deal which saved the employees. The buyers bought the business and they took it into a modern factory in Shoreham and left me with this big empty space. And it's like 20,000 square feet. And about the same time, I discovered that there's a real shortage of makerspace, studio space in Brighton. And I was people were saying to me, oh, it should be sold and it should be developed and turned into whatever. And I really wanted it to carry on being a space where people do stuff and make stuff. And an important factor in my decision to do that was something that happened to me a few years before, which was before I was running the lighting company, I was working for the lighting company, and I was called in to look around a factory of a company that had gone bust. And basically they wanted to sell stuff, the receivers wanted to basically sell off stuff cheap. So I walked into this old lighting factory, and it really gave me the chills, because this was basically a place where people kind of got together. It was a community that just basically up and left. And so, you walked around and there was sort of calendars on the wall, there were post-it notes. And this was a place where people sort of socialized, friendships were forged. And and it was like really sad. And it really sent a sort of chill. So the experience had a massive impact on me. So when I sold my lighting business and my factory was cleared out, I was determined that my space would actually have a new life, and we'd get a new community to move in, and it would have a new life doing something else. So we followed an intense load of research, networking, doing grown-up things like building, making business plans, seeing who the competition was. And as part of my research, I went to a place called Cockpit Arts in London. And I don't know if you've heard of Cockpit, anybody, but Cockpit is, they basically, I think they call themselves the only kind of incubator for craft-based design. And they've got two sites, one's in Holborn and one's in Deptford. And if you go to Cockpit, as well as offering affordable workspace, they also mentor and assist their makers in helping them grow and develop their practice. And it's a really impressive model. And if you get the chance, go to Cockpit, because they have open studios. It's a really interesting place. So in the summer of 2010, I was coached by the Vanessa Swan, who was the then CEO of Cockpit. And it was just really to learn how to run makerspaces. And so 2010 was all about information gathering and finding out about the best way to run a makerspace. So by the start of 2011, we sort of transformed the factory, and it looked amazing, and we repainted everything. It was incredible. And February the 4th, 2011, we opened our doors. There was a sort of trickle of interest, and it snowballed. And then within 18 months, we filled all the spaces. Our first licensees were a company called Workflow Studio, photographic studio. Steady On Designs was a sort of contemporary furniture maker, and Pottery Galliano is a ceramicist. And I'm really pleased to say that all these years on, they're still here working and doing stuff at Rodhus. So my coaching at Cockpit made me realize that the aim should be to attract a real sort of diverse range of creatives as possible. That way, some really interesting collaborations can occur. And when I went to Cockpit, I saw sort of like milliners, fabric designers, printers, jewelers, and that sort of thing. So when I staggered out into Gray's Inn Road, into the cold light of day, I wondered whether there was an equal pool of creative talent in Brighton. And it turns out that, of course, there is, because we've got Brighton and Sussex University just down the road, running courses in art, product design, textiles, fashion, architecture, and more besides. And then you've got 40% student retention. So I think I read somewhere that you've got this whole lot of people that come to Brighton to study and then stay on. So there's a real rich theme to draw on here. So that was 11 years ago, and over those years, it's been a real honour to have played host to some incredible makers. The majority of people who do leave our studios tend to leave because they've outgrown us. Rodhus usually is their first space from working from home, and then they come into us and they kind of grow through, and then eventually they'll kind of get too big for us and leave. And it's great to see the incredible work that goes on. And I'm born and bred in Brighton, and there's a sort of real burgeoning creative sector. So it's really great. And so the bonus of having all these creatives based here under one roof, coupled with the sort of broad variety of skills on offer, means that collaborations do occur, and people are really giving in terms of helping each other out and that sort of thing. So that's really kind of quite uplifting as well. So fast forward to 2020 with a pandemic and the lockdown, and we made the decision back then that we were going to stay open. We looked at the guidelines and thought, actually, most of the people working here couldn't do what they do at home. So we carried out risk assessments, and we closed down communal areas, and we did everything we could to make the factory a safe space. So all our units are self-contained, so it was entirely possible to come into the building and work in isolation. Even so, I was concerned about the impact of the pandemic. Naturally, nobody had had this before, and had this sort of to deal with this before, and I was unsure that sort of the making community would be supported by the government in any way, shape or form, and they weren't. So in the end, during lockdown, 4 businesses moved out of the 30 plus that we have here. 2 because they absolutely couldn't work and carry on working, and 2 because they outgrew us at that stage. One was a guy that was involved with doing bar and restaurant and gym fit outs, and those places were shutting down because they had the opportunity, they had to shut down, and they had the opportunity to refurbish their kind of gym or restaurant. So this guy was doing really well and really busy. And then another company was a contemporary lighting manufacturer, who basically their online sales just went massive, and so they took on extra staff, and they had to move out. So it was kind of quite a positive story. And so it was 2 years since the initial lockdown. I do remember actually when we did lockdown, initially I sort of sent a message around saying, yes, we are open, do come in and you can use the space, but people stayed away. And it took maybe about 6 weeks for people to kind of start thinking about coming back in and working. So the sort of the buzz returned after about 6 weeks. But what surprised me about the whole thing was that with the general kind of gloom and uncertainty around lockdown, people were still looking for workspace, and I still had loads of people inquiring about spaces. And so the spaces that the people that I lost, I was able to kind of get other people in fairly quickly. And I sort of still continue to receive applications to this day, people looking for workspaces and doing amazing work. And if I had one thing that is a real kind of frustration for me, is that there's not enough space, and I'm turning people away all the time, which is just really unfortunate, and it's probably the one frustration of my job. So what is it about Brighton? So why is all this creativity going on in Brighton, and there's this lack of practical makerspace? And I think there's a historical problem here. For one thing, the city's prosperity was built on the sort of service, tourism and hospitality industry. And so spaces like mine, or factory, are thin on the ground. And there's also an orthodoxy that dictates that buildings like mine shouldn't really exist in Brighton. And so in 2013, I got Rodhus going. We've been going for a couple of years. I was contacted by a commercial property agent, and he came in and he said he wanted to buy my building. And he said to me, you know what, you shouldn't be here. This area here is where the students should be. This is where the students' flat should be. And the orthodoxy dictates that this square meter on the ground should make this amount of money. You should be in maybe somewhere like New Haven or Lancing or something like that. That's where you should be. And if you are familiar with this area, there's a lot of student accommodation going up around here. There's just kind of buildings going up everywhere as we speak at an alarming rate. Someone called it Croydon by the Sea. Gleaming towers seem to be springing up everywhere. But with all this kind of sort of febrile development going on, I'm really determined that we stay in Hollingdean Road as a sort of little carbuncle of making and a reminder of manufacturing heritage such as it was going on in Brighton. So that's what I'm trying to do. And around the same time, I was interested in setting up a pop-up shop. So 2013, I wanted to set up a pop-up shop featuring some great makers and designer makers and people that I came across in my travels. And my plan was my pop-up shop would feature creatives, designers, designer makers, a real sort of high standard of people. And so I believe now that, and I believe then, I believe now that a lot of people that live in the city are unaware of what goes on and what goes on in Brighton and the amazing sort of talent that's around. So I wanted the pop-up shop to be somewhere central and it would be a curated show that would feature some really high-end stuff. People going into Brighton to Churchill Square would kind of wander into the mall and they'd see this incredible stuff and it might inspire and really sort of educate people about what is happening locally. And there was an empty shop at the front in the mall. It was the old Lego shop, if anybody remembers it, sort of quite a few years ago. Lego had moved out, they moved to a bigger shop downstairs and left this space, this empty space. And it was like a minimalist dream. It was all white and it was a sort of long, really clean space. I thought this would be perfect for my pop-up. And I thought, great, this would be brilliant. So I approached the same guy that told me that I shouldn't be in Brighton. And I said, what's the chance of me getting that as a pop-up to do like a creative show? And he said, no chance at all. The received wisdom is that the owners would rather keep it as an empty space waiting for one of the big players like Zara and H&M to come in. So there's no chance of you getting it as a pop-up. And this was a really sort of sad realization that that's the orthodoxy again working, and I would have to change where I was going to do that. Then we did do a pop-up in the North Lanes, but it was a real wasted opportunity. The high street was looking bleak prior to the pandemic and continues in its decline. And there's a large number of empty shops in Brighton. And maybe now, all those years later, old attitudes will change, and maybe people will look at sort of turning some of those empty spaces in Brighton to pop-ups or repair cafes or exhibition spaces. Things like materials libraries, that would be fantastic. But anyway, be interested to know what other people would think if they look at sort of like all these empty shops, what they would like to see them being turned into. But one thing's for sure, what Brighton lacks in makerspace, it makes up for invention and creative talent. And I really believe this will only continue to grow. So 2 years ago, we were all about to face a real challenge without knowing what was in store for us. Since then, I've seen a remarkable resilience and a will to survive with the people doing their stuff in these really uncertain times. And it's been really amazing to see this. So if you do find yourself ever in the Hollingdean Road area of Brighton, do come in and I'll give you a tour, a factory tour. I love showing off my space. But obviously be sure to email or call first. But yeah, that's my story, such as it is, and obviously be delighted to sort of obviously hear what the other speakers have to say as well. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thanks.